episode of SolPods Studio. I'm Amy Farrell, and I'm joining from the Bay Area of California. Today, I'm here with Jennifer Leonard, who's joining us from New York City. Jennifer has an impact investing background, and she's worked with many different types of investors over the years to help them align their values with their financial goals. She's currently a managing director with New York City based Flat World Partners, an impact investing consulting firm. Prior to that, she was a chief investment officer with Centrinsic Investment Counsel. And Centrinsic is an investment firm that works with nonprofits and other mission led individuals. Previously, Jennifer had worked in impact investing with Cornerstone Capital and also with the Cap Rock Group. And at the very beginning of her career, she actually did equity research with Morgan Stanley and with Merrill Lynch. And finally, she spent some time in microfinance, which I'm really excited to hear more about. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us today. And we're excited to jump right into a conversation.
Thank you, Amy. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, let's just kick it right off. Your career really started in what I would call traditional financial services, but at some point in time, you made a pivot to impact investing. Can you tell us really what brought about that change?
Sure. So after business school, I went to work in equity research and I was covering the telecom sector when one day I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and on the front page, there had been a series of articles about Muhammad Yunus and microfinance. And I remember thinking at the time, this is really interesting. It's using business tools and frameworks to promote economic development, and I was really intrigued by it. A couple years later, I decided to go to India where microfinance was taking off, and I was fortunate to get a fellowship from the American India Foundation with a leading microlending organization. Um, Microfinance, just to level set the discussion in its most traditional form, which is what I was doing in India, is the provision of small loans to women so that they can start income generating businesses. And there's different models of microfinance, and that sector has expanded greatly to encompass a range of products beyond the traditional lending model. But I was working in the more traditional, what's called group lending when I was in India.
Fantastic. So it sounds as if you went over to India, kind of driven by this passion, and it led you to incorporate this type of impact relating investment solution or using finance to achieve better outcomes for individuals. That then was further integrated to your career when you turned back to New York. How did then you transition back into kind of New York City and the capital markets on Wall Street?
So, coming back from India after 4 years, I wanted to continue working with women in microfinance, but I wanted to broaden my knowledge beyond just India. So, I went to work with an organization that was focused on women in microfinance, which had a global reach and expertise across the microcredit spectrum, which was a good next step for me. I eventually did return to Wall Street for a bit, but I remained passionate about investing in impactful entities, notably those that help women. So I was compelled to return to the impact investing space. And one area that became more important to me during my time in microfinance was the importance of financial literacy, which sadly I think a lot of people still lack.
No, definitely. And I guess since you had been working with women in India and then you were broadening your scope, did you find that there were gaps in knowledge, globally? And how do you think people can implement tools to bridge those gaps?
There's definitely different levels of knowledge in the sector globally. I think there's certain what I found when I was in India was that there were certain areas that were much further along in terms of the development of microfinance. Specifically, when I think back, Latin America had a much more developed microfinance market than what the Indian market was at the time. And certainly, Muhammad Yunus and Grameen had developed a pretty robust model running out of Bangladesh. So um, I think there was a lot of room for growth. And I think more than anything, there was room for cross-pollination of ideas where you could see an idea that had taken shape in one region kind of be transported over to other regions where there was a lot of learning to be done and shared.
I guess you then took that experience and really transferred it to working with individuals, including investors, on impact investing. Can you tell us a little bit about that turn in your career?
Sure. So going to work with the broader impact investing space, because I was just doing micro lending. Um, Initially, when I started in microfinance, it was pretty much impact investing was pretty much microfinance and clean tech, and it really has morphed into its own industry that covers a lot of different thematic areas and really reaches all asset classes at this point. So it's been really exciting to see that growth. Um, I think that I've been able, luckily, to work with both institutions and individuals, and different forms of institutions, from foundations to large family offices. And it's been really interesting to learn how different organizations approach their portfolio decisions around impact investing, and to see people on their journey going from just learning about impact to potentially fully engaging their portfolio with an impact lens.
Just if we could stop right there and just talk about some of those experiences without naming any names. Were there any particular client relationships you had where it really surprised you and they were so excited to link their values with that impact investment?
Oh, definitely. I think one area that's been great to see growth in is the foundation space, and specifically foundations and nonprofits that are looking to mission align the impact side of their business with their grant making. And that's been really exciting. I think you've been seeing that a lot more in recent years. It's become a lot more popular where foundations um, and nonprofits are going kind of all in on impact, and looking for either full alignment or um, the majority of their assets being aligned with their mission.
As others are following suit, maybe you could talk about really the evolution of how impact investing can be applied to different types of asset classes. Because in order to have that all in approach, you really need to be able to measure the impact on society and the environment across all of your holdings. So, can you talk to us just very high level that about that evolution?
So impact investing, it now spans pretty much every asset class, notably across the private space, where I think personally there's a lot of room for impact generation. I think this is probably a good place to talk about definitions of impact investing, because I think there's a lot of different definitions out there, and I think everybody approaches it their own way. My personal view is that all investments create impact, and it can be positive or negative. But to create positive impact and to be an impact investment, there really has to be impact generation built into the business model, into the actual framework of the business. And so grows, as the business grows, the impact will grow with it. And so that's sort of what I like to look for when I'm looking for investments with impact. And as I said, it's there. You can find this across the private investing space, venture, private equity, real assets, real estate, and private credit. There's also the ability to invest with impact in public markets through um, both thematic funds that are focused on specific impactful areas, such as clean tech, or to invest in funds that have a very heavy focus on shareholder engagement and working with the companies that they're buying stock in to affect positive change. Um, So I think there's a couple different ways that you can work with target companies and target funds um, to assess the impact. I think there's been one thing in this space that we've seen is a wide proliferation of frameworks and approaches to measuring impact. And sometimes it can be a little bit daunting just because it seems like there's so many different ways of measurement, but ultimately, uh, as I think it's important to look for positive outcomes uh, that the impact is generating and measure those using some sort of a framework. I think one example of a framework that has been used is the Impact Management Project framework, which looks to assess impact across five um, areas and really does a great job kind of trying to quantify the impact that's created across those. So I think there's a lot of room here for uh, investing across asset classes using impact, and I think there's a lot of room for frameworks to apply to the different investments as well.
Definitely. Let's hope that some of those trends evolve. So turning back to young people again, I mean, you have started at Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley. I know you've got your CFA. You did your MBA at Wharton. Do you recommend that young people pursue degrees in finance, or how can they? People who want to have a role like you or working in impact
Mhm.
investing. What are the different routes or paths that you would recommend that they pursue?
Sure. So, in terms of courses in school, now you can get an MBA in sustainability with a sustainability focus, or in certain cases, an impact investing focus, which I think is amazing. I think to move into impact investing, it's really important that you have a good balance of both um, impact and sustainability knowledge, but also traditional financial knowledge as well. So I would recommend a mixed course offering. Like I would look for a mixed course offering where someone has taken some courses in sustainability and impact investing, but has also taken some more traditional courses like corporate finance, maybe some courses about investment management or structuring investments, depending on what area of the business they want to get into. So I would say if you can find a balance between the two, that's probably a good way to go.
Well, this is fabulous. So I so appreciate you walking us through your journey. It's so interesting, especially because you have literally touched every asset class through the lens, whether it's as a CIO or working as an advisor with clients, investors. Um, so now I want to turn it to a kind of fun question. So
Okay.
you have to be creative, put on a creative, your creative hat. We ask everyone who joins us if you had what we would call a sustainability superpower, some imaginary superpower that you got that would change the world for the better. What would that superpower be and why?
So, that's a good question. My sustainability superpower would be something that combines access. It would be the ability to combine access to education and financial services, including insurance, savings, and credit for all people, because I do think the combination of these two particular factors is very powerful in terms of achieving development goals and in terms of just being able to increase your career prospects and uh, your livelihood, basically. So I would really try to my superpower would be to combine those, to be able to combine those two really effectively and
Oh, I love
leverage
it.
that for the population.
Well, I hope we can at least get it going on SolPods. We are focused on education and sharing sustainability knowledge amongst the members, but I think if there was some way to snap your fingers and make sure that everyone had access to that information, it would certainly be helpful. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us today. Loved hearing about your journey and also your recommendations for young people who are looking to get into impact investing. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.